They came from the dark between stars, an ancient force that didn't want peace, didn't ask questions, and didn't stop. One by one, the outer colonies fell. Beautiful worlds with bustling cities, families, dreams, wiped clean in hours. It wasn't war the way humans knew it. It was erasure. Planets didn't surrender. They vanished. No warning, no messages, just flashes in the night sky followed by silence. What remained were scorched moons and drifting debris fields. By the time the Federation understood what was happening, 15 colonies were already gone. Billions of lives, just gone. The enemy, whatever it was, didn't even have a name. The analysts called them the Shroud, because the moment they arrived, everything disappeared into darkness. Communications, satellites, power grids, and hope. Every attempt to fight back ended in complete failure. Advanced fleets, cutting-edge weapons, even AI-guided drones, none of it mattered. They were faster, smarter, and they had technology that bent physics like it was a game. To them, we were ants. But something about humans never sat well with the impossible. Fear might have spread like wildfire across the core worlds, but so did grit. Somewhere in the chaos, one ship refused to retreat. Not a supercarrier or prototype destroyer, just a mid-class battlecruiser, patched up from past wars and long overdue for decommissioning. Its crew, not elite operatives or heroes, just people. Engineers, Marines, medics, some barely out of training. They had no reason to believe they could hold the line. But they did. They weren't trying to win the war. They just wanted to give someone else a chance to escape. Just a few minutes more. That's all they needed. And in that window, everything changed. Nobody knows why that ship didn't fall. Not immediately, at least. The Shroud hit them with everything. Distortion fields, EMP storms, hull melting pulses. But something happened that defied every prediction. The ship took the hit and stayed standing. Inside, the crew wasn't celebrating. They were terrified. Systems were failing. Hull integrity was down to 18%. And they were out of missiles. But then the scans came in, clear signs that the enemy was hesitating. For the first time, the Shroud paused. It wasn't because of the ship's weapons. It wasn't fear. It was curiosity. Something on that ship or someone had caught their attention. And that's when things got strange. People on board began hearing voices, whispers through the comms, through the walls. Not words exactly, more like questions, probing. As if something was trying to understand what made these humans different, why they hadn't run, why they fought when they had no chance of winning. And then the lights flickered. The engines shut down. The stars outside bent, twisting into impossible angles. And a figure stepped out from the shadows of their own ship. It wasn't one of them. Not anymore. The figure wasn't wearing a suit, no oxygen mask, no armor, just a strange shimmer across its skin, like light reflecting off water that wasn't really there. It stood silently near the aft corridor, motionless, watching. The crew froze. One of the security officers instinctively raised his sidearm, but before he could even speak, the ship's gravity shifted. Not all of it, just in that hallway, like space itself had decided to tilt. No one knew who it was or how it got aboard. Internal sensors hadn't registered an intruder. Airlocks were sealed. Every entrance was accounted for. And yet there it was, human-shaped but clearly not human anymore. The captain, a woman who'd spent more years in space than on any planet, tried to keep her voice calm as she addressed the crew. Maintain positions. No one fires unless I say so. But her hand was shaking. Everyone's was. It wasn't just fear. It was something else. A pressure in the chest. A feeling like their thoughts weren't entirely their own. They had trained for alien encounters. Simulations, protocols, emergency drills. None of them involved the enemy coming aboard without a sound, standing in the middle of the ship like it belonged there. And the strangest thing, it didn't attack. It didn't even speak. It just stood there, listening. While engineering scrambled to restore power and weapons stayed offline, the science officer began running scans. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't emitting energy like any known life form. In fact, the data didn't make sense at all. Its mass fluctuated slightly, like it was half here and half somewhere else, as if reality itself didn't quite know how to place it. Back in the comms room, static returned to the screens. Not just random noise, patterns, sequences repeating in precise rhythms. The linguist on board, originally there to assist with long-range translations, noticed it first. She believed it wasn't interference. It was language. Not words, but intention. Signals meant to be felt rather than heard. The crew began piecing things together. This wasn't just some enemy weapon. This was contact. A first encounter under fire. And it wasn't with a species. They were beginning to suspect it was with a mind. A vast collective intelligence that operated on a level humans couldn't fully grasp. And for some reason, it had focused on this one ship. This one group of humans who had dared to stand instead of flee. Then came the voice. Not through the speakers. Not in the air. It was inside their minds, each of them hearing it in their own thoughts. But the message was the same. Why do you endure? It wasn't an attack. It was a question. But it came with images, memories that weren't theirs. Worlds crumbling, civilizations burned, species begging for mercy that never came. The shroud hadn't just destroyed planets. It had judged them. And now it was watching humanity. Measuring. Testing. The figure moved. One step forward. No sound. But the lights dimmed again, and the hull trembled, not from outside pressure, but from something deeper, like the ship itself was holding its breath. And then, with a soft hum that made the floor vibrate, every door on the ship unlocked at once. The crew stood frozen. The figure raised its hand. And someone they all knew, stepped forward from behind it, eyes glowing with light not of this world. A crew member who had died weeks ago. No one spoke. The crew just stared at the person standing beside the figure, the one they had buried in deep space 3 weeks ago. Same face, same uniform, right down to the burn mark across the left shoulder. But the eyes, those weren't the eyes they remembered. They glowed faintly, like starlight seen through water. Cold, distant, watching everything. A few of the younger crew backed away, their footsteps shaky against the floor. One of the medics whispered a name, barely audible, but the resurrected crew member didn't respond. They just turned their heads slowly, scanning the room like they didn't recognize any of it, like none of it mattered. The captain stepped forward, voice steady but strained. Identify yourself. There was a long silence. Then the figure, not the one who returned, but the shimmering entity beside them, tilted its head slightly. The lights dimmed again. Every screen across the bridge displayed the same phrase, pulsing in soft white text. Identity is irrelevant. Purpose remains. Before anyone could react, another tremor ran through the hull. But this time it wasn't from the outside. It was the ship's own systems turning back on. One by one, consoles lit up. Life support stabilized. Engines rumbled faintly, but all the controls had shifted. They were no longer responding to human input. Something else was guiding them. In engineering, panic was brewing. The chief technician was yelling over the comms, saying their tools were reading phantom code. Something woven into the ship's core systems. It wasn't human. It was rewriting protocols in real time, adapting faster than they could trace it. Whatever had boarded them, it wasn't just physical. It was digital too, and it was inside everything. Somewhere in the mess hall, 2 off-duty crewmates locked themselves in a storage room, not because of the intruders, but because they had started seeing things, reflections that didn't match their movements, voices calling their names from empty corridors. The ship, they said, felt alive, and it wasn't on their side. Meanwhile, the linguist kept working. She had isolated fragments of the strange thought language and was convinced it wasn't just communication. It was a test, a series of mental challenges being injected into the crew's thoughts. Memories were being used against them, fears twisted, regrets replayed, and the question kept returning over and over. Why do you endure? She thought it wasn't asking out of curiosity. It was asking because it didn't understand. It had seen civilizations crumble when faced with overwhelming power. It had seen species break, surrender, collapse. But humans fought, even in hopelessness, even when logic said to run. That defiance, it didn't compute. And maybe that scared it. Or worse, maybe it fascinated it. Back in the bridge, the captain was watching the screens flash through unfamiliar star charts, coordinates not in any known system. The ship's course was being altered. They were going somewhere the Federation had never mapped. She turned to the crew, about to speak, but the resurrected officer beat her to it. In a voice that wasn't his, he said, "You've been chosen." The bridge went silent. Outside the ship, space began to fold. Not warp travel, not jump drive. Something older, raw. And just before the ship slipped from known space, one last message flashed across every screen. If you fail, they all fall. And then, they were gone. Silence. That was the first thing they noticed after the jump, if it could even be called that. No stars, no drift, no hum of cosmic radiation, just a stillness that pressed against the hull like a vacuum of thought itself. Space wasn't supposed to be like this. Even in the darkest corners of the galaxy, there was always something. Here, there was nothing. The crew scrambled to restore manual control, but the ship had locked them out. The navigation array was running on coordinates no one recognized, symbols instead of numbers, maps that reconfigured each time they were viewed. The text couldn't make sense of it, and the AI assistant had gone completely offline. Not corrupted, just gone. Like it had been erased or simply stopped wanting to speak. Even the resurrected officer had gone quiet, sitting in the corner of the bridge with eyes closed, as if waiting for something to arrive. The shimmering figure hadn't moved since they arrived. It just stood near the viewport, staring into the void like it saw something no one else could. Then came the pulses, faint at first, like a heartbeat in the walls. They weren't physical. They were felt. Thoughts echoing inside their heads that didn't belong to them. Memories they never lived. Panic swept through the lower decks as some crew began reacting. Seeing things that weren't there, speaking languages they'd never learned. One soldier collapsed in the armory after carving strange symbols into the wall with his own nails. The captain ordered lockdowns on non-critical zones, but she knew it was too late for containment. Whatever this was, it was inside them now. Testing limits, probing, like it was preparing them for something bigger. The linguist had locked herself in the observation bay, drawing patterns on the glass with a stylus, trying to decode a sequence she claimed had been sent through the dream of one of the engineers. She was convinced now this wasn't just a test of endurance. It was a judgment of humanity's right to exist. The shroud didn't destroy for power. It destroyed what it believed could not evolve. And now humanity stood at that threshold. Meanwhile, strange signals began appearing on the scanners. Shapes. Dozens of them. Massive. Silent. Half-cloaked in whatever passed for matter in this space. Not shroud vessels, but older. Forgotten. Wrecks from species long gone. One floated past, cracked open like an egg, its hull lined with the skeletons of a race no one could identify. Whatever had happened here had happened many times before. The shroud had brought others here, and none had returned. Then, as the crew tried to process it all, the ship finally stopped moving. No warning, no control, just stillness, and a sudden red glow forming outside the viewport. At first it looked like a star igniting, but it kept growing. Expanding, not light, not fire. An eye, a colossal, otherworldly eye, opening slowly in the void, watching them. And then the resurrected officer stood. His voice was different now, deeper, layered with others. "It sees you. All of you. The final question comes next." And as the eye blinked once, the ship shook violently. From the depths of the void, something began to rise. The thing rising from the void didn't have shape, not in the way humans understood. It was a mass of thought and gravity, shifting between colors that didn't exist and patterns that felt like déjà vu. The eye watched it, then turned its gaze fully on the ship. Time slowed, not in seconds, but in feeling. Like every heartbeat stretched into moments of memory and meaning. Inside the ship, the chaos settled. The pulses faded. The strange symbols vanished from the walls. Even the shimmering figure lowered its head, as if whatever was coming had arrived. And decisions were about to be made. The resurrected officer stepped to the center of the bridge. The glow in his eyes faded slowly until they were just eyes again. Human. He blinked once, confused, then looked at his hands. Where am I?" he asked, his voice shaky, his body trembling like someone waking from a long, cold dream. The captain caught him before he fell. "You're home," she whispered, even though they were light years from anything that could be called home. A voice returned, not loud, not inside their heads this time, but through the ship itself. Calm, almost kind. "You remember pain. You remember loss. And still, you choose to remain. We do not understand this. But we have seen it now. Truly." Every console lit up in soft blue light. Controls unlocked. The AI came back online, but it was quiet now, waiting. The eye outside slowly began to close, and with it, the impossible light faded from space. Then the voice spoke one last time. "This species is not complete, but it is not unworthy." In a blink, the dark void around them was gone. The ship reappeared near Jupiter's orbit, drifting gently in standard space. Alarms buzzed softly as the crew rushed to verify systems, but everything was intact. Engines stable, no hull damage, no trace of what had happened. And yet, everyone felt it. Something had changed. The crew returned to Earth days later. They were debriefed, questioned, analyzed, and scanned for every possible anomaly. Scientists didn't believe half of it. Politicians tried to bury the rest. But the truth spread, quietly at first, in whispers, then in stories passed through comm channels and outposts. Humanity had been judged by something older than stars. And somehow, they had endured. The linguist published her findings anonymously. She said the real message wasn't just about survival. It was about choice. The shroud had seen enough destruction. What it needed to understand was why a species would keep fighting when all logic said not to. And the answer, she wrote, might be humanity's only real power, hope without reason. The captain retired, quietly, not long after the mission. She never gave interviews, but sometimes she would sit under the night sky, looking up with a quiet smile, because she knew what was still out there. And maybe, just maybe, it was watching too. In the end, the ship that held the line wasn't remembered because it destroyed the enemy. It was remembered because, in the face of impossible odds, it stayed. And someone, something, chose to let us continue.